Do we choose what we believe? Could I genuinely choose a belief? You know, we talked earlier on about how you can't just lie to yourself and brainwash yourself to think something. Could I genuinely make myself believe something? Could I choose to? So could I choose to believe that you're a spaghetti monster if my whole life, all my family was on the line? Could I choose that belief?
No. Well, others might argue no, because clearly you've given a good example. It's so ridiculous that you're brainwashing yourself. Whereas when you look at beliefs, we have to look at evidence-based to say, what's your experience in life? And that will formulate our belief. Or what's your education?
So with that said, then I can't choose a belief because my experience, my evidence, my education, but I couldn't.
You couldn't, no, if we don't choose beliefs, we develop beliefs.
Yeah.
We develop them, but we develop them on what we experience or what education tells us. If I say to you, research shows 1 in 200 people have got psychopathic brains, then you look at the research and go, okay, I believe that research now. You may dispute it. But if you have experience that, blimey, about 1 in 200 people hurt me, then you've worked that out yourself. So your experience, but you might get someone who's really oblivious and lack of insight and say, I believe 1 in 2 people hurt me. And now, you think, well, can we challenge that? And let's see your experience. But if it resonates with them, it's not for me to say, well, that's just rubbish. That's their experience.
I'm really compelled by this idea of whether we choose our beliefs or not, because I think this is at the heart of a lot of these topics like confidence and self-esteem. There's a lot of people out there that say, go look in the mirror and say nice things to yourself in the mirror, and that will help you believe in yourself.
Okay, I'm glad you're laughing. Yeah, it is silly, isn't it? I think if you look in the mirror and you say, something that you don't really like looking back, I think then you have to go down the road to say, right, is it really that important what I look like? I can give you a good example. Years and years and years ago, I worked with a young lady who didn't like what she looked like. She really didn't. And she was attractive, in my opinion, but I think everyone's attractive. And there was no point in me trying to convince her. I was a young doctor then, and this taught me. And I couldn't get anywhere. So I was struggling. And she was in an inpatient. We were worried about self-harm and so on. And that was her coping strategy for having very low self-esteem, and I was lost. So as a junior doctor, by chance, I asked her, just chatting to try and get her to see some value in her. I said, what do you like doing? And she said, I love animals. And by chance, we did have a bird table, which was neglected. And we also had a cat on the ward. And no one really bothered with the cat. And I said, can I ask you to do something for me? And this wasn't planned. I just thought, can you look after the bird table? And can you look after the cat? And without a word of lie, a different person emerged. And I sat there and I thought, why has that changed? Because this isn't what you learned at medical school. You learn antidepressants and, therapies and talk. And I thought, what have I just done? And I'm young at that point to read around, and I like to read outside of medicine. And I thought, I gave her a purpose, and that was her self-esteem. She took it out of herself. She then said, it doesn't matter what I look like, I want to help the animals. And this is a true story that she got discharged and went to work at an animal centre. And I met her in outpatients follow-up, and she was as happy as could be. And I said, we've got to broach the subject. What about, your self-esteem and where you look? And she said, well, my self-esteem doesn't matter, because she actually did have it, but it was on, I am a carer, and these animals need me. So you could argue psychodynamically she was looking after herself by looking after the animals. She needed love, so she gave love. So I could see psychoanalysts saying, there you go. I don't mind how it's interpreted. It worked. For me, it worked. So I suddenly thought, wow, sometimes people just need to have a purpose in life and feel valued, rather than what they look like. So that was the start of me really starting to think as a young doctor, don't go down one route. Try and see things as being like a spectrum and have a toolbox to say, well, hang on, let's stop looking in the mirror and let's start looking outside yourself, because that could be the turning point for you. So again, that won't work for everyone. So I have to, when you say about this, I'm probably getting the idea now, whenever someone comes in, I have to really work hard to understand their mind. What beliefs are they holding? What's going to turn them around? What's not helping? What are the long-term consequences? What hidden beliefs have they got that they're not aware of, but I've got to get them out? And when I've done all that, I then go to work on it to help them to challenge what we can both see as being unhelpful and replace them.
In that example of giving that young lady a bird box and the cat, and then her going and working with animals, and that making her feel a sense of sort of worthiness, I guess.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that if that job gives her that sense of worthiness, just like the relationship we've talked about and all these other stimulants, can that then become a negative thing?
Exactly. Anything can't it? And this is what I'm saying, that when people say, write me a book, and I think I'm always reluctant to do it. And it's taken me 10 years to write this one, as in 10 years later after the first one, because I don't want to go in there with a process, but I feel I've got to, because, so many people, it's very humbling, have said, this has so helped. It really makes sense to me that I thought I've got to expand on it and give it in more detail so people have really can do it themselves. But the problem is it's very individual. So I have to work with the individual. And yes, that could become a positive for the rest of her life. But as long as we can give her perspective as well, that she's worthy as an individual. But if your value is, I believe the value I have is, I want to be altruistic. If that is a value you hold and you're living that value out by helping animals, for example, then we know that that will give you peace of mind.
What I'm alluding to there as well is this workaholism.
Yeah. Do I keep helping more and more? And that
do I work 7 days a week and I can't leave the bloody animal sanctuary?
Exactly. And that's where you've got to get this tiddlywinks, but come out and get perspective. So say, right, it's great you're doing that, but don't start making it the more I do, the better I am. Instead of saying, no, I have to look after myself too. So again, it isn't just one thing. We're giving it very sort of linear here. I'm just giving you an example of one angle, but then I would work on the girl in other areas of her life. So it isn't just that angle. But the bottom line is, and I guess most people think this, if you've defined your values and you live by your values, then you become a wholesome person. So it's most people don't even know what their values are. So I push this point that I think this is the only thing that I've ever seen that gives peace of mind. And that's to live out your values. But you have to find them first. And people muddle up what's valuable and what's value. They muddle them up. So I tried to define that clearly so people know, let's find your values and then let's start measuring how you live those values out, because it's not as easy as you think. So I give this as exercise in the book to try and say, work out your values and then live them out, but measure them. So again, as an example, let's say most people put down respect for others. They like that. That's a value I really hold to. And then when you say to them, well, how would you demonstrate that? People go, I don't know, So I say, well, let's look. There are many ways you can. So, for example, one way you could demonstrate respect is by listening to someone, by thinking, I want to get their point of view, because that's respectful. Not judging them, just listening. I may not agree, but I'm going to listen. That is one thing you could do by testing it weekly, to say, let me start listening to people, because that then at the end of the day, I think that was respectful. I may not agree, and I would be polite in saying, be assertive, I don't agree, but I'm listening and I respect your view. So if that resonates, then that's one way of measuring them being respectful. So I like people to do work with me where we work on things like this. And then they get high self-esteem. So going back to the young lady, if I did that with her, then she would say, right, so caring for animals is great, it's altruistic, but actually I've got something else now as well. So exactly what you said, it doesn't become the devil. Where I've got to do this every day, otherwise I'm failing again. You get it into context.